Hey guys, Dr. Bodle here. Now, one could make the argument that getting your sleep right is the most important aspect of helping to improve your thyroid symptoms. But despite the fact that fatigue and exhaustion is the #1 symptom that people with hypothyroidism present with, many continue to struggle with falling asleep, staying asleep throughout the night, or they wake up in the morning feeling poorly rested. So that's why in this week's video, we're going to talk about why getting sleep is such a challenge for so many people and the changes that you can make to improve your sleep and to support your thyroid healing. And if you like learning about natural strategies to support your Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, subscribe to the channel for videos every Thursday, leave a comment if you have any questions or thoughts, or simply give this video a thumbs up. Now, you might have struggled with your sleep before, or you're continuing to struggle with your sleep right now. And for different people, the pattern with which their sleep gets disrupted can present in different ways. You might feel exhausted at the end of the day and know that you need to get a good night's rest. But the second you lay down, your mind starts racing, a million little things run through it, and it can take you hours to finally fall asleep. For others of you, you might be thinking, no way, that's not me. When I lay down, I go to sleep right away. But the issue for you isn't the falling asleep, it's the staying asleep. And although you might be out like a light the second you lay down, you might be up at 2 or 3 a.m., tossing and turning, unable to get back to sleep for the rest of the night. Or even worse, you could be waking up at that time with an increase in heart rate, an increase in feelings of panic and anxiety, which causes you to be so wide awake that you lay there staring at the ceiling, checking the clock every 5 minutes, or even having to physically get up and do something. And finally, there's a third group of people that can fall asleep, they can stay asleep, but when they wake up in the morning, they feel groggy, out of it, achy, sore, beat up, and they think, maybe a few more hours is what I need, but it seems like whenever they extend their sleeping, they actually feel worse. And even though this group might be the envy of the other two groups, it's also a tough spot to be in. And of course, health is never black or white, and many of you might be experiencing a little bit of all three, either in the same night, or depending on what's going on in your life, you might shift from one to the other. And in an effort to combat this, many people turn to sleep aids, whether natural or medication. And although in some dire situations, this might be necessary because some sleep is better than no sleep, it's very common that these sleep aids don't provide much of a benefit, or the side effects or quality of your sleep is so poor that it really isn't worth it. The problem is, the goal of many of these sleep aids is to calm or sedate you, but that has nothing to do with the actual mechanism or the reason why you're not sleeping in the first place. Instead, people with thyroid problems very commonly develop issues with unstable blood sugar and fuel levels, which leads to changes in stress hormones that then disrupts circadian timing and rhythm. Now, when I go over this with patients, and you might be thinking this right now, they'll usually say, I get my fasting glucose tested and I've never had an issue with it, so how can this be a problem for me? And the reason for that is because it comes down to how your body is functioning throughout the entirety of the day, and because it's not just about the amount of glucose in your bloodstream, it's about how we're getting fuel into our cells. Chronic thyroid problems can lead to systemic inflammation and stress. And when we have increased levels of inflammation, it can impair our brain's ability to properly monitor our fuel levels and disrupt its ability to respond. Our hypothalamus and pituitary gland in our brain are constantly monitoring our bloodstream and making sure that we have enough fuel available. If not, they'll make adjustments either internally to increase the amount of breakdown of fuel, either glycogen or fat storage, or they'll make adjustments to try to externally fix the problem by doing things like increasing our hunger levels. However, as I said before, when chronic inflammation is present, the sensitivity of our brain becomes impaired, and so does our ability to determine the demand and need of our cells. I've described this before as having a faulty thermostat in your home. Usually, you should only have a drop of a few degrees in temperature before your heat kicks in and brings it back up to your preference. But if your thermostat isn't working, then it's possible that the drop in temperature could become much greater before your thermostat recognizes that there's a problem and makes the necessary adjustments. When things are working well, fixing a change of only a few degrees is pretty easy to do. But it's these large swings and large fluctuations that actually puts undue stress on the system and perpetuates some of those problems that we're already struggling with. Large deviations in our blood sugar contributes to the overall inflammatory load. And as the system continues to become more unstable and more stressed, that impairs our body's ability to transition into a restorative sleeping state. The other issue is that when we have a decrease in thyroid function, we have a decrease in the sensitivity of hormone receptors at the level of the cell. So when it comes to insulin, a hormone whose job it is to help us shuttle glucose from the bloodstream into the cell, if it can't bind appropriately and efficiently, then the ability to get that glucose into the cell also becomes impaired. That means for people who tend to have higher blood sugar levels and for people who tend to have lower blood sugar levels, both can have issues with low glucose within the internal environment of the cell. Even though the high blood sugar people have a lot of glucose available, they can't get it into the cell because of the changes in insulin function. And if we can't get it into the cell, which is where all of the breakdown and burn of that fuel occurs, then it really doesn't do us much good. The low blood sugar people are also struggling with some of these insulin resistance problems because they have the same issues with the low thyroid hormone activity. But in their case, sometimes these problems can become compounded because they don't have a lot of fuel available to begin with. So if you don't have much glucose available, and then what you do have is being limited in its ability to be transported into the cell, then you can see how this can impact our ability to have enough fuel available for the production of energy. But whether it's our body's ability to recognize when there's a change in fuel status, or it's our ability to get that fuel to the place it needs to be, anytime our cells are starved of fuel and therefore can't produce energy, it places undue stress on our brain and our body, which causes a further shift into a hyper-stressed or sympathetic state, which is not only counterproductive, but also actively antagonistic to sleep. We've said before that sometimes having that sympathetic stress response is a good thing, because sometimes you need to run away from the bear in the woods that's coming after you. In fact, it's one of the reasons why humans are so resilient and why we're so good at surviving. But what you don't want is to have that same stress response occur at 10 p.m. at night when you're trying to go to sleep. And sometimes when I have patients tell me, I've never been a good sleeper, I've always been a light sleeper, every little thing wakes me up, I think, I don't know if it's so much that you're not a good sleeper. Instead, you've never been able to manage some of the stress in your life. Again, stress response can be good, but just in short little bits. It shouldn't be happening all the time. And although it is necessary for survival, it's also one of the main reasons why, as we've been discussing today, many people can't sleep, but for others, it might be the reason why they struggle with fertility, with their ability to digest food, or with their ability to recover. These things just don't do well when we're in a hyper-stressed and sympathetic state. And in our modern world, much of it comes back to our blood sugar and fuel regulation. So how can we improve in these areas, stabilize our blood sugar, avoid those increases in stress hormones, and therefore improve the quality of our sleep? Since we're looking to avoid those drops and spikes in our blood glucose, we want to make sure that we're consuming foods throughout the day that provide consistent fuel. For some people, this might just mean eating more. There are individuals who just aren't eating enough because they're not paying attention to it, and there's others who fear eating too much because of the thyroid problems that they're dealing with. But even though we definitely want to avoid undereating, we don't want to increase our calories willy-nilly. This is where I really recommend people bump up their protein intake and their intake of healthy fats. Both protein and fat tend to be metabolized a little bit slower, and therefore the energy that it provides you lasts a longer period of time. I think protein in particular can be a good thing to focus on, and I'll link for you my video that talks specifically about this topic, as when we get our protein right, the fat usually falls in place without too much effort. So check that video out if you're interested, and make sure you're hitting your protein goals if you want to stabilize your energy and have that transition into better sleep. In addition to getting healthy protein and fats, you'll also want to pay attention to the carbohydrates that you're eating. The more processed and refined carbohydrates are, the more of an impact it's going to have on your blood sugar. An easy way to tell if you're overdoing it here is if you're noticing changes in your energy around your meals. If you feel sleepy, tired, or drowsy within 30 minutes of eating, or if you feel more energized, less anxious, less nauseous, and less stressed, both are signs that the amount of carbohydrates you're eating probably isn't right for your body. So work to reduce those more processed foods and focus on getting your carbohydrates from natural sources like fruits or fibrous vegetables. In combination with your eating, you'll also want to make sure that you're moving regularly. Not everyone with thyroid problems tolerates a huge amount of intense exercise, and that's not what I'm talking about here. Regular, daily movement that allows you to not only push yourself, but at the same time feel good and energized afterwards is a great strategy for managing inflammation and improving the way that insulin functions in your body. And if you do have some extra glucose in your bloodstream because you're eating more carbs than you tolerate or because you are very stressed, transportation of glucose into our cells during exercise is actually insulin independent. So making sure to move your body is almost like a little cheat or hack, and doing so will have huge benefits systemically. But with all those other strategies in mind, if you're still having some intermittent days that are really long, demanding, and stressful, and you feel yourself crashing in the evening and you know that your sleep probably isn't going to be as good, then my recommendation for a quick fix is just to eat. Whether your mind is racing before you go to sleep or you're waking up in the middle of the night with anxiety and stress, it's not necessarily because your life is stressful. It's because your changes in fuel levels are inducing increased stress hormones. The best way to fix that quickly is to give the body what it needs. I'll have patients play around with this because different people do better with different combinations of macronutrients. But choosing an option that has a little bit of fast fuel with a little bit of more stabilizing fuel, maybe something like an apple with almond butter, an avocado, a hard-boiled egg, a small piece of chicken, or even a tablespoon of coconut oil, whatever the choice is for you, getting some extra fuel, providing your body with some support will allow it to calm down and allow you to return to sleep if that is the mechanism at play. But I hope you liked today's video, and if you have any comments or thoughts, I'd love to hear from you. Plus, make sure you share if your sleep has improved from making some of these nutrition and lifestyle changes, rather than relying on some of the sleep aids that are so commonly recommended. If you learned a lot, but feel like you need some more help, I wanted to remind you that, unlike apparently a lot of other people on YouTube, I am still in practice, I still work with patients one-on-one, and would love to be able to help you out if I can. The best way to start that process is by sending an email to contact@seattlethyroidhelp.com. Once we get your email, my staff will reach out to you, make sure that you're a good fit for our free consultation, and then help you get scheduled from there. The consultation is absolutely no pressure. All we want to do is take some time to sit down together, talk about what your goals are, and see if we're a good fit. Once you and I have more information, then we can make a decision together whether or not we want to move forward. If you'd rather work on some things on your own, check out some of the other videos on my channel or grab either one of my free downloads, which are linked in the description box. But that is it for now. I love and care about you guys. I hope you're doing well. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't done so, and if you want more info, you can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. But my name is Dr. Bodle. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you in the next one.